Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the year 2021. I think we all have big dreams for the upcoming season. Certainly my fingers are crossed that it's going to be an awesome year. Hey everybody, Bill Sherck, the man about the woods, and this is the Minnesota Bound podcast, the stories behind the stories. And today's episode is all about hunkering down in the great outdoors, especially when temps drop below freezing and maybe even below zero. How do you do that comfortably? What are the shelters like, and what are some options to kind of try and explore? It's one of my favorite things in the world. It's going to be quite a show. Of course, the Minnesota Bound podcast is presented each week by our good friends at Connecticut Water Treatment Systems. Of course, my family uses Connecticut, and I think you should too. Also, Star Bank, the bank we use at Minnesota Bound. And don't forget our good friends at the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. All right, if you want to talk about staying outside during the winter months, especially here in the North Woods, I think there's nobody better to talk to than the guy I seem to run into. I'll walk off the grid into the boundary waters, and out on the horizon, you'll see this peculiar white beard skiing towards in the middle of nowhere. And sure enough, it's Dan Cooke, the guy who just spends more time outdoors than just about anyone I know. Dan, Happy New Year. How the heck are you?
I'm good, Bill. Happy New Year to you.
The last time you and I communicated, which was just a couple of days ago, I started getting pictures of you setting up before the blizzard hit. Literally, we had a blizzard warning here in Minnesota. And you said, I'm going to go outdoors.
Yep.
What causes a person to be wired in such a way?
Oh, it's a good one. I think it's the wanting to see that you're prepared to be able to do that.
You and I are wired a little bit the same way. It's counterintuitive, right? When the bad weather hits, most people want to hunker down safely indoors, but you say, no, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to go outdoors.
Right. To make sure that, you can set up your shelter when the wind is blowing crazy, to be sure that your shelter and your skills are such that you can take it on and do more than survive, but thrive.
Yeah. And there's some satisfaction. There's actually great satisfaction in my book behind that. It's funny. We were talking, I started doing this as a kid. I was lucky enough to have a scoutmaster, a guy by the name of Phil Zietlow, pretty famous in the ranks of General Mills. He's the guy who helped create Honey Nut Cheerios and all that stuff. But Phil knew how to get us outdoors, right? So even when we were quite young at church, they'd plow all the snowbanks to get ready for Sunday services. In the scout troop, we'd all go dig into those snowbanks and create shelters. And Phil wanted us to do that so that everyone who was attending church could come and see how we were faring and what our ideas were and, what our sleep systems were for staying outside. And, when you're doing that at 12 years old, that's pretty exciting, but it's a great teaching moment too.
That it is.
Do you remember any of your earliest trips in bad weather?
I was trying to think on that probably my first winter camping trip, I was probably 13, 14. And once again, the church group, boys, our leader took us up by Hinckley and off into the woods, not too far from the car, but off we went. And I think we had a tent. And we had a big fire and lots of hot chocolate and spent a couple nights out and probably frustrated our leader to no end.
Yeah, right.
But we had a grand time, and I thought, wonderful. And prior to that, like you, I'd been digging in the snowdrift piles alongside the driveway, tunneling from one end of the driveway down to the other end. And my job was to shovel the driveway, so I'd put all the piles on one side of the driveway so I'd have a big enough pile to make my tunnels in. So
Right. Back in the day, the snowplow guys used to have the public service announcements. Remember that? Talking about, hey, kids, you have to be careful. Don't tunnel too close to the road. Otherwise, you're going to get plowed up.
right.
Right? But a lot of people have had that sensation, right? A lot of people have done that in their yards. And I think a lot of people have thought, gosh, I wonder what it would be like to stay out here more than playing in it a little bit after school. What if I lived in it? What if I slept in that? And that's where my passion started to grow for being outdoors in weather, because you learn quickly snow is actually not terribly cold. It's a great insulator, and it can provide shelter.
So true.
So then it progresses into, all right, snow is rudimentary. You can build a snow cave, or what those of us call a quinzee, and stay in that. But there are other shelters. Back in the day, I can remember our coldest trip on record. It was headlines in the newspaper, the 80 below zero wind chills and temps at like 31 below zero. And we camped out, and I remember it was a death trap. It was 4 canvas tents all facing each other. So you kind of had this cross, and in the middle was a barrel stove. And then to make it soft, we had bales of hay that we spread out in the 4 tents, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 of us camped out. And I do remember that night, it was severely cold, and I can remember the smell of the old canvas, just a little bit gnarly, and had a hard time sleeping. I had saved up for an REI mummy bag, but we made it. And at that point, I knew I could survive outdoors as long as I had shelter.
Yeah.
The other thing I remember about that trip is on the morning we got up. I don't know, it feels like it was a Sunday morning for some reason, but we were trying to cook eggs in plastic bags. So we were boiling eggs in the pot, and this reporter from the newspaper, I guess it was the Tribune back then, or the Star, I forget which, but I remember her standing out there doing a story on us being out. I remember looking at her thinking, she looks like she's about to literally die. She is so cold watching us. And those are all great memories. So snow caves are one option. Canvas tents are options, but these days it seems like winter shelters have become pretty fancy and high tech. And I should say this, part of the reason we're talking to you is, yes, you spend a lot of time outdoors, 12 months a year, but you also have a business making outdoor gear, and along with packs and covers for canoes and all that, you build winter shelters. What's that technology all about?
Oh, technology. I guess I'm going for the lightweight shelters that we can pull into the back country of the boundary waters, and more, you can base camp or you can move your camp from site to site, and having the tent lightweight and compressible, very small as compared to canvas tents. You can pack it up on your sled and have room for your other bulky winter items. Whereas a canvas tent, typically you're close to where you can have mechanical transportation of your tents, as they're usually pretty heavy and pretty bulky. There are exceptions to everything, it's obvious, but so by using lightweight materials, it's not a cure-all for everything. As with materials, there's advantages and disadvantages that come with everything. So your nylons, if they're coated to keep a rain out, which can occur in the winter, it doesn't breathe well. Canvas breathes well when there's not snow or rain on the surface of the canvas. But nylon condenses, and so you'll get frost on the inside, you'll get condensation. So you have to have ventilation to mitigate that. So it's not a cure-all, the high-tech materials.
Are you using a wood stove or a source of heat inside your shelters?
Yeah, we use a wood stove. I use either a Nicco stove, it's just a cold roll sheet metal stove with a 3-inch flue, or I use a 4-dog titanium stove with a 3-inch flue.
And they work. They work
They
well.
I mean, I've been out at 38 below in a very large, what I call an octagon tent with a 30-inch knee wall and a 10-foot peak. At 38 below with one little stove in it, and she's about 60 degrees at 38 below.
Which 60 degrees at that temp, when you're out in the middle of nowhere, feels like desert heat. It's amazing.
It's awesome. I mean, your love handles are warm when you go to sleep. It's awesome.
Well, and I think what's always baffled me about that is, I mean, you're talking about a thin piece of nylon, right? For people who may not know exactly what material, just think of a tent material that you see in just about any shop these days. A high-tech version of that, it's paper thin, but it helps hold heat, and it helps hold a tremendous amount of heat.
Yeah, it's just a simple little barrier. You overcome it by producing so much heat. It'd be like turning your furnace wide open and leaving your windows partially ajar on your house. If your furnace is able to keep producing more heat than escaping, you'll stay warm.
Yeah.
So that's how the winter camping in the paper thin, as you called it. The material I use is 1.1 ounce silicone coated nylon. It's 3/1000ths of an inch thick. So you take a hair out of your head, and if you're 20 and healthy, the size of that hair is 3/1000ths of an inch.
Yeah. It's crazy to me. And, this, a lot of people know my two sons, my young sons, spend a good chunk of their time outdoors, especially since this COVID stuff has hit. So I don't know. They've got, I need to check their tickers, but I think they're at like 22 days, 23 days out now in the last month. And they had some guests visit their hot tent this weekend, a first-time camper, and his dad came along, and they were absolutely baffled that it was 9 o'clock at night on a winter night. The door was wide open to the tent, the stove was going, and the guys, the kids were just happy as pie, just hanging out. And it was one of those moments that I pointed, I said, "Hey, Jack, notice, are you doing all right?" He's like, "This is great." I said, "Strange, huh? Doors open, it's winter, and here we are." Right? The shelters just work.
Yeah, they're just a gathering place where warmth and social interaction is awesome.
One thing about your shelters that I think is interesting, right? So many of us who do this are constantly trying to figure out the best way to get stakes into the frozen ground, or, I've got a teepee that I set up on the ice, so now I need to figure out how to get, good holding stakes into frozen lakes. But your system's a little different.
Yeah, my tents that I make, they have snow pockets around the perimeter. So it's actually, rather than a flap that you would cover with snow, it's actually a pocket you can fill with snow to secure it around the base. And that's how it's held to the ground. And then because of the knee wall, you need pullouts to keep the tent up. And I use snow anchor bags where you fill the bag with snow and you center it by like hitting your leg with that bag so the snow compresses. Then you add more and do it again. And then you put that bag down into the snow and stomp it in. And then you use that as an anchor to do your pullouts to erect your tent.
Yeah, it's almost like filling a big pillowcase. And I always wonder how it holds, right? They lock in pretty well.
I've never had one pull loose. I can't say that. Once we had winds of gusts 40, 45 miles an hour coming off a lake. And I had a couple smaller snow anchor bags pull loose, but never any of the big ones.
Well, so what's your advice to people, right? Again, when people watch our television shows, and, I do a fair amount of winter camping, there are a lot of oohs and ahs from people who haven't done it. But then the next response is, how can I do that? How do you get people started staying outdoors when fall turns to winter? What do you tell people to do?
I would say start in your backyard. The first thing is your sleeping bag system. Take 2 summer bags and put them inside of each other, as long as you're not compressing one or both of the bags. And 2 bags inside of each other. Make sure you have a warm stocking hat and possibly a neck gaiter or a scarf to keep around your neck and maybe cover up around your chin, and your hat can pull down and over your eyes, and have a waterproof thing underneath you and something that's waterproof above you, and sleep out in the backyard. And you'll find how you need to adjust your hat and your scarf or neck gaiter, and not to breathe into your sleeping bag, as that causes all sorts of condensation, which is fine for one night, but your second night, if that condensation is iced up in there, it's miserable the second night.
Yep, it just continues to compound.
Yep, so don't breathe into your sleeping bag, and just go do it, and see how you have to adjust to make things work for yourself. And look at, when you progress from the backyard to camping out somewhere, check if you're using a tent or if you're using tarps. I would always suggest starting out cold camping, not using a hot tent.
Yes.
Because it forces you to learn how to survive without external heat of a hot tent. And your skill set will be improved that much more than if you start with a hot tent, where your ability to dry and keep warm is just a function of gathering wood and keeping the fire going. But by learning to thrive without that, when it comes to hot tenting, it becomes a piece of cake. It's like arriving at a birthday party.
Yeah.
Everything fun and games.
It is, and that is absolute truth. I mean, I didn't get into this hot tent stuff until, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, maybe. And for the 40 years or 35 years before that, it was always cold camping for me. So you have to learn how to manage moisture. That's all it is, whether it's moisture in winter boots, moisture in your sleeping bag, moisture in your clothes. What happens if you get a mitten wet and you're out without being able to walk back to the house? How do you get that mitten dry, right? That's all it is. And then when you've got a hot tent, simple. I'll just hang it up above the stove for a while, right? It's this incredible safety net that makes things easy. But I do like that advice. Start simple and start without the heat. Start with cold camping. And it can be simple. Honestly, Dan, I remember, around the Twin Cities here in Minneapolis and St. Paul, we'd be camping out in the suburbs and in the woods, and there wasn't always enough snow to be able to pile it up and build a quinzhee, a snow cave. So a lot of times you just pile up and build some walls and then put a, $5 blue tarp from holiday stores over the top and you had a shelter.
Well, you don't even have to go that far. I
Right.
mean, I walked, I snowshoed from Mid Gunflint Trail to Grand Portage with a bunch of other juniors and seniors in high school. I was a junior, and it was 5 days of snowshoeing, carrying frame packs. We had a canvas tarp to put underneath. There was two of us per sleeping area. The canvas tarp went down, and two of us laid out our sleeping bags and foam pads. And a canvas tarp we just pulled up over us, didn't cover our heads. And that's how we slept for those 5 nights.
Yeah.
I
And it
mean,
worked.
it wasn't comfortable, and it was a good thing we were juniors and in high school and stuff, and, didn't require a lot of creature comforts.
Right. Right.
But we did it. And I still remember it to this day. And talking about moisture management, I had snowmobile boots, and they were held together by rubber bands because the nylon was separating from the rubber bottoms and stuff. But one night we didn't take care of our gear too well, and the liners flopped over, and they froze in that condition during the night. And in the morning, I had to put on 5 or 6 pairs of socks and go running in the woods to get firewood so I could melt my sorrel liners so I could get my feet into them because no one else wanted to get out of their sleeping bag that morning.
So we're gonna pay some bills here real quickly, but yes, I want to go back to snowmobile boots specifically. I have a story about snowmobile boots too, which for those who don't know necessarily what those are, a lot of the old ones, it was a rubber bottom, nylon top, and there was a zipper up the front and middle. And I think you could buy a pair of those for like $20 back in the day. But a story about that in a second. But again, first, Dan Cooke is my guest today from Cooke Custom Sewing, and we are talking about winter shelters. What do you use? How do you stay comfortable and thrive outdoors when temps bottom out? The podcast, The Stories Behind the Stories, is brought to you every week by our good friends, first and foremost at Kinetico. Do you know Kinetico? The Shercks certainly do. We live out in the country, and we have that ironclad well water. That's good news and bad news. But we treat our water with a Kinetico whole home water treatment system. And we also use Kinetico's K5 drinking water system. Everyone knows what that white buildup is like around the faucets, and it tends to gunk up the dishwasher and also the washing machines. But, with Kinetico, we have none of that. Call Kinetico. Do yourself a favor and have them come check out your water and suggest a system, and look forward to clean, safe water. Also, can't forget, a big thanks to our friends at Star Bank.
Hi there, Ron Shera here for Star Bank. If you're putting your money into mega banks down the street, who knows where that money's being used? Bank locally. Keep your money local with a community bank that actually cares about you, your family, your business, and your goals. Check out the bank we use at Minnesota Bound. Try Minnesota's own Star Bank. You can find them online at starbank.net. When you call Star Bank, you actually hear a real living person answering the phone. Star Bank has 10 convenient locations around Minnesota to serve you and all the mobile banking products that you need to manage your money. Check out all that Star Bank has to offer at starbank.net.
And also, we'd like to thank our friends at the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources.
Almost everybody knows Minnesota DNR because I think it's an agency that most Minnesotans have to deal with in fishing, hunting licenses, the state parks, you name it. But a lot of folks don't know Minnesota's DNR also manages close to more than 1,400 wildlife management areas. They manage them for wildlife, and that they are open to hunting, bird watching, for example, and truly a blessing to this state. You can find out more by going to Minnesota DNR website that would be www.mndnr.gov. WMAS, that's Wildlife Management Areas.
Okay, back to the storytelling. Dan Cooke is my guest today, and Dan loves life outdoors. And he also builds shelters. And you and I have had a connection, first off, because of your Boundary Waters packs, which when I was much, much younger, I would see the Cooke Custom Sewing logo on a portage and think, man, that stuff's fancy. I'll never afford it. You've had a legacy building gear that just works. And you've also been a bit of a mentor when it comes to this hot tenting thing and shelters. And I'm not being facetious when I call them high technology, but they are. You are using very advanced materials, fabrics. You're sewing very unique designs, and they just work, right? We've shared time in the Boundary Waters where it's colder than most people want to think about, and we're sitting happy as larks with 3 or 4 people just enjoying, life outdoors. There is magic in that feeling. And I think with the way the world has been, Dan, with all this COVID stuff, pandemic, people on lockdown, there is great value in having that freedom, being able to get outside. Are you still doing it with this pandemic?
Oh, yeah. I had the tent up in the backyard from the blizzard and slept out there for the next 7 nights, just enjoying it. Finally stopped at New Year's. The neighbors were setting off some pretty good fireworks. So I didn't feel like being awakened.
Your natural experience was somehow impacted.
Yeah, it was kind of, not a good thing. So anyway, but no, just, I backed to the Chain of Lakes Regional Park here on the north side of town, and it's just quiet. You hear a little bit of freeway noise. Can't get away from that anywhere.
Right.
But, just hearing the snow fall against the tent, it always sounds like it's coming down a lot harder than it ends up being. It's amazing how noisy a snowflake is when it hits a piece of nylon.
It's
just wonderful to be out there.
Yeah, it's a very distinct sound, but it's also, when you get used to it, it's very soothing.
Oh, very. I mean, it's like a lullaby. So
And I think part of the sensation too of that moment, Dan, is I'm safe. Right? We as humans have this thing. We want to feel comfortable. We want to feel like we're wrapped in a safety net. We want warmth. And you can do it. And those moments give you that.
Yeah. If you're confident of your shelter, having used it before and that you've set it up properly and you didn't, I don't need to do that tonight. It's not going to whatever, those things can creep in there. But if you've set up your shelter and you're confident of it, and you hear the snow falling and you just roll over and know that life is good.
I laughed. Our oldest son, Brady, yesterday was in the tent until 11:15 in the morning. He slept almost 13 hours. And when he finally wandered in and said, "Hey, are you guys willing to make me a big special breakfast?" We talked about it. How does that happen? Why? How are you able to do that? And his answer was phenomenal. It was just spot on. It's no rush. It's very comfortable, and I have no reason that I have to get up. Right? He was just relaxing. He was just enjoying the sounds and the feeling of being, cuddled up in a warm sleeping bag, and that's part of it. The other thing I wanted to talk about with you, we were talking about how you get started. For me, Minnesota has a great resource. It's our lakes, and they're all open to people. Many of my first biggest adventures were on Lake Minnetonka. We would hike out by Big Island because you could tuck into little coves and little, protected private areas, and you could set up a camp where you felt like you were the only person around. And there are a ton of lakes where you can do that. In fact, any lake, as long as there's public access, which most of our lakes here have, you can hike out and go anywhere.
Yep. The lakes are a wonderful resource. And often, the further north you go, there's often public land on some of the shores of lakes, and being able to use that as well.
One precautionary you got to take, which we learned very early on, is when you are camping on a lake like Minnetonka or any other where there are other people around, if you are doing a snow cave or a snow shelter or Quincy, you have to mark it. Snowmobiles have a heck of a time, especially on a cloudy day, discerning a white pile of snow from anywhere else they'd be riding. So you always have to have stuff up, colorful stuff up that kind of marks, hey, here we are, heads up.
Right.
You make gear that is very colorful, and you do that for a couple of reasons. Why?
Well, when you're out in the woods, during the summer, you talked about the portage packs. You lay down a green portage pack at the end of a portage, and you carry across part of your gear, and you come back and you're thinking, well, maybe someone else grabbed the pack that I left over here to help me out, but it's really just hiding in the weeds a little bit.
Yep.
So by having colors that don't blend in, you know where your gear is. And having multiple colors, if everyone has the same color pack, you don't know whose pack it is till you open it up and start rummaging through it. By having multiple colors, you can kind of tell whose is whose.
And another reason you've mentioned that I love is the gear stands out. You can see it. So when you take a photo or you make a memory, it stands out. It's bold.
Right. You can say, that's my pack. You don't need a perfectly composed photo to draw you into it if there's color in it. Color kind of covers up your lack of compositional skills.
Yes, which I don't have much of.
I'm more of a documenter than a composer.
All right, if somebody wants to take a look at your gear, certainly check out the shelters you build. How do they find you?
On the internet, cookecustomsewing.com. Cook has an E on it, Cooke, and customsewing.com. I don't stock the winter shelters, and I'm currently sold out of them, but we do mucklucks and other stuff, and we also do all the summer gear for the Boundary Waters.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, just wander into the Boundary Waters, and I'd say there's a better than 50-50 chance that you'll run into Dan wandering down the trail. Not aimlessly, but with very strong intent. You ski harder and make tracks better than just about anyone I've ever met.
I do enjoy skiing in the winter. And probably to upset some of your folks, I don't do a lot of snowshoeing. I've been on a couple long snowshoe trips when I was younger, and as people have often heard me say, snowshoeing is like a forced death march.
It just depends on my mood. Sometimes I'm on snowshoes, sometimes I'm on skis.
Yeah.
Just whatever. It depends where you're going too, right? Slush.
Oh, yeah. Oh, slush is terrible on snowshoes. But with skis, if you have the wider backcountry skis, often even big boys like me that carrying a little too much weight, with the wider full backcountry skis, you can float on top of the slush and not get down into it. Boy, with a snowshoe, You can float on top of a lot of it, but boy, if you get it down in the slush and it's cold, have you ever tried to get out of the slush when your snowshoes are weighing about 30 pounds apiece?
Yeah, unfortunately, it happens pretty quickly.
Oh, it's over before you know it's happening.
That's a story for another time. Dan, thanks for joining us today.
You bet.
I'll look forward to seeing you in the woods real soon.
Sounds great.
Hey, you've been listening to the Minnesota Bound podcast, the stories behind the stories, presented by Connecticut Water Treatment Systems. Clean, safe, great tasting water. Also, our friends at the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources and Star Bank, the bank we use at minnesotabound.com. Feel free to drop me an email at bill@mnbound.com if you have any questions about building winter shelters or what your options might be. Otherwise, until next week, don't forget to introduce a kid to the great outdoors. We'll see you.